It's me, Mike, and him, Will.
Do you want to try again?
No, is that not right? That's correct.
That's correct. That
Did we
is
not
correct.
know? I'm sorry.
That's just different.
Hello, welcome to This Week in History with Mike and Will. I'm Mike.
And I'm Will.
There we go. See, same effect.
It's the same effect. But now I feel better.
What we do is we pick a thing, an event in history. Will looks up or knows about it, researches, and then he has 1 hour to explain that thing or event to me.
Correct.
This time we have a thing, a person. We have a person.
Been doing people lately.
Okay.
Talking about people.
Talking
lately.
about people.
Let's phrase that differently.
Yeah, you do people as
do
long
people.
as they approve.
Yep.
Today we're discussing Jan Zizka.
Yes.
And the death of Jan Zizka. But we'll be
Specifically,
discussing his life. And Will has 1 hour to talk to me about this.
Yay.
Ready, Will?
I'm ready, Mike.
Okay, begin.
All right. So Jan Zizka, he was born circa 1360. No,
Okay.
the dates and numbers are weird.
Which is why we're not doing his.
Which is why we can't do his birthday
Right.
because we don't know when it was. He wasn't important enough at the beginning of his life to have anybody mark this down. And this is a time in history where people didn't write that down unless
Sure.
you were really wealthy or a king or people would track this.
But people
down.
know they would know their own birthday, though, right?
Yeah, typically, I would imagine.
Although I feel like they didn't celebrate their birthdays
They
as
probably.
much.
I don't think they did. That's a relatively new. I feel like that's a relatively new.
He was
thing.
born when the fields thawed.
Yes. Sometime around now. Now that you're out of the womb, go farm.
How old are you? Many.
A
moons.
lot. More
Right.
than this many.
All right, where was he born? Who was he?
He was born in the town of Trocnov, which it was in Bohemia. It's
Bohemia.
modern day Borovany,
Ooh.
which is in Czech Republic, which is why it's hard to pronounce.
Okay.
So, the land of Prague and such stuff.
Yeah.
Apparently, Czech is one of the most difficult languages for an English speaker to learn. It's has no relation to Latin at
Is it
all.
Cyrillic? Is it like
It's
Russian?
Uses bits of. It's not Cyrillic, but it's.
Is that Russian?
That's what this. Yeah, the Cyrillic alphabet is Russian. It uses its own combination of letters and stuff. It has
Okay.
lots of accents on things. It can be Anglicanized pretty well and pretty easily, so that we can look at it and go, okay, that's what that says.
Sure.
But Jan Zizka, it's normally spelled Janzizka, but almost every letter in the Zizka part has little swirlies over it and dots and
Accent
accents.
marks.
Yes,
Those-
little accent marks all over the place.
So we don't know if we're saying this right.
And I'm just doing the brutal.
Was that
English
the
version
thing,
of it.
the pronunciation in there?
I believe the pronunciation is Zizka, but yeah. So there's a little almost like a shallow V over the Z and a shallow V over the another Z, and yeah.
I'll look into it.
Yep. So
Jan Zizka.
Jan Zizka. Jan means John.
Hey, John.
There's a lot of Johns in this story.
Okay.
Lots of Jans.
Lots of Jans.
Lots of Jans. Jans and Jans all over the place. Ja to the Jans. So the reason why it's kind of muddy about his birth and even his age is that in 1378, there's a document with a John of Trocnov on it. Trocnov, that's the town he's from. And I think it mentions a Zizka, and he's like a witness to a wedding.
Well.
You'd have to be an adult to do that. Some scholars of this guy have said, well, he would be too old then to take part in the battles he takes place in later on in his life, because his major stuff happens from 1419 to 1424. So that's 50 years later. And in the medieval times, being 50 on a battlefield,
Yeah.
that was very rare.
Unless you're at medieval times,
If you're in Vegas
Restaurant
at Excalibur,
thing, yeah.
or you go to medieval times or
then
something.
you can play anytime you want.
You can be as old as you want to be, because modern medicine. But they did not have modern medicine.
No.
In fact, much medicine back then was considered heresy, and they burn you for it.
Oh.
So there was a lot of stuff that they
Well,
couldn't do.
anti-vaxxers were tough back
They
then.
were, well, they ran the show. You did a vaccine back then, kill it with fire. This thing is a monster, traitor, killing machine. It's the devil.
The spirits.
It's amazing that if somebody tries to do something nice, they're like, the devil. Why would the devil try to do something nice? Don't you question me.
He's tricking you.
Which is a big part of Jan Zizka's story is all about heresy.
Oh, okay.
So there's a bunch of different documents that refer to a Jan Zizka or Jan of Trukhnov, so it would have been the same town, and there are a couple guys named John, obviously, in like every town.
Every time you say Trukhnov, I think truck nuts, and I can't not think of
like the nuts and bolts, or are you talking about the little thing on the back of the trailer that the trashy people have?
Yeah,
just alienated people. But honestly, if that's your type of infantile humor, I don't have much respect for you.
Sorry, if I had a truck.
And you had nuts on the back, I would make fun of you relentlessly.
That's fine. You'll be behind me.
Just to be fair.
That means you'd be behind me.
Yep, I would be behind. I will follow you. I will follow you wherever you go, Mike. That's this partnership here. You're in front, and I'll just follow. Except when I talk about the history.
Carry on.
All right, carrying on. So there's a few different documents that talk about different things.
Yeah.
They're dated at different points throughout would have been his youth, but it's kind of muddy about if it's specifically him or if it's a member of his family.
Or just another Jan.
It could be another Jan, or sometimes it just mentions a Zizka, but that's like a nickname.
Oh.
I don't know. I looked up. I couldn't find exactly what it means.
Okay.
I probably didn't dig in the right spots.
Mm-hmm. If anyone knows, put it in the comments.
But that's not his family name.
Okay.
So it's a specific reference like to him.
Oh.
Now, at some point in his youth, he either got into a fight or there was some kind of accident and he lost his right eye.
Ooh.
So from then on, he was the one-eyed.
A poking fight.
Yeah, they're not really sure what it was. It could have been just kids roughhousing.
Sure. He
could have been running through the woods and there was a stick.
Yeah. He could have got a new BB gun for Christmas.
Before I started doing the research, yes, he could be Ralphie Zizka. Everyone knows that's a cousin of his.
You'll try out.
I thought he lost his eye in battle.
Oh.
But he didn't. At least not this one.
Right. Okay.
Spoiler.
Keep talking about a battle coming up. All right.
There's lots. Yeah, this guy is. Yeah. So
one eye. Right eye?
Right eye. Yep. This one. You're mirrored. So he lost his right eye at a young age. And he was nicknamed One Eye. Which maybe that's what Zizka.
Maybe that's hey, we cracked this code.
Oh no, he's called One-Eyed Zizka. So anyway, that would have been great.
Nice.
But he was known for that. I mean, there's not a lot of people with just one eye walking around.
Nope, they tend to run into things.
Right.
You just sit still there, Jan.
Maybe don't go anywhere. Your depth perception's all wonky.
I'll drive the ox cart to the river.
Now, because he was lesser nobility, he had a few more options than the average peasant at the time. He wasn't tied to the land, so he could go around and do stuff.
Nice.
But at some point in his life, he ran afoul of the House of Rosenberg. Rosenberg was... Rosenberg.
Don't they steal nuclear secrets later?
So, there was a fellow named Henry III. He was a nobleman. He was in service to a higher nobleman who was called a burgrave. There's burgraves, margraves. It's levels of who owns bigger swaths.
Yeah, you've said this word to me before.
Yeah, so a margrave owns like a huge chunk of land. Burgrave owns a smaller chunk of land. They're a nobleman.
And a mini grave.
Yeah.
And just a grave.
Yep.
It's very small.
Yeah. Yeah, then there's just a grave. That's actually where grave comes. It's just the little plot of land. A burgrave means like you own like the land value of like 1,000 graves. Yeah. So 6 by...
It's a little chunk, but it's my plot.
It's mine. There's a 4 grave. That's like the average farmer. It's just enough to have a garden. It was a good pun. But at some point, so Henry III's not the burgrave, but he's in service to this guy. Okay. So he owns a castle. He runs a town, so he's wealthy. And there's not a specific recording of what happened, but at some point, Jan Zizka's name comes up in what is called, I want to get the name right, the Acta Negra Maleficorum, which is a black book. That's what that means.
Yeah.
Apparently, a lot of nobles would have this black book. It wasn't like an evil thing. What it was is a list of people you don't like who are like... Book? It's like the bandits. Like you write down, like this guy is officially blacklisted. That's,
Is this a singular book?
for
Or is
each
it like-
household, it
Okay.
seems like it's a thing. So, like, if you've wronged them, it goes in the book.
Yeah.
This is official.
No, what I'm saying is that then passed on to other people.
I think it's
Or is
passed.
it just you're in my little black
I think
book?
it's passed to the family.
Okay.
Like the household
Everyone
and
knows.
and
we
all
don't-
the people that they run, that they
Okay.
control. So there was the entire township of, I think it's Borodenice. It's hard to pronounce, but it was this city. So we'll just call it Rosenberg's land, Rosenberg's city. At some point, though, he went from being a member in good standing of this community, or at least in the neighborhood, to an enemy of the city, not of the state. So, like, the king wasn't mad at him, the higher nobles weren't mad at him, but this Henry
Someone-
fellow was pissed.
Okay.
Apparently, what Zizka went out and did
Oh, we know.
was he joined a gang of local outlaws. Now, this is not Robin Hood.
Okay.
Outlaws at this time did Robin Hoody stuff, but they would raid towns. They would waylay and kill merchants. They would burn farms.
Yeah.
That's what outlaws did. Outlaws did, basically, you're trying to survive in that time through raiding.
Right.
So these guys, a lot of them were professional fighters who, I mean, you could be like a mercenary who didn't have a contract, so you're bored, but you don't have any other skills.
Right.
And your entire life is murdering people.
There you go.
So naturally, you're going to be good at robbing.
Yeah.
And this is a time when we've got like plate armor and high-end weaponry. This is not like little sticks and stones kind of combat. This is, some of these guys are very high-end professionals. Lesser nobles, robber barons was a thing where they, like, I mean, some barons were like, they were called robber barons.
Yeah, it's a different
They
thing,
had a
right?
castle.
Yeah.
But they would just rob their neighbors and stuff. And it
Oh.
was like a type of, they were an outlaw to everybody else, but technically like not. They're just raiding people.
Oh, you think that was like also like an ego thing? Like I'm rich and I'm gonna go be an outlaw.
I'm going to be an outlaw.
Ooh.
I'm going to have some fun. And then,
Give me my silk mask.
well, definitely that was a thing that happened like later on with the Scarlet Pimpernel,
Yes.
like the gentleman swashbuckler
Yeah.
type outlaw,
Yeah.
highwayman.
You can only do that if you're rich.
Very romanticized, yes. Yeah, because you're like, I robbed this person and I can
Yeah.
afford to steal from the rich and give to the poor, haha, because I have a ton of money.
Yes.
These guys are desperate.
Yes.
But some of them are like Zizka. They have a specific cause. Now, it's unfortunate because we don't know what his cause was.
Oh.
But something like they hurt his family somehow.
Probably for blindness.
He just,
Half of his money was for blindness.
he just, yeah.
This will continue.
This is
Will.
gonna, good. So he basically, in Italy, they would have called this vendetta.
Okay.
A vendetta is an actual thing where you declare vendetta against
Yeah.
your rivals, and it's blood. He's basically says that Henry is his target, and anybody that's under his thumb is fair game.
Ooh.
So he raids these townships that are under his purview. He might have been involved in a series of attacks on castles that actually ended up capturing King Wenceslas of Bohemia. He
Good
was
old-
the king of the day.
good
King
old king.
Wenceslas. King Wenceslas IV was at one point captured by like his own people and his brother and imprisoned. It was a whole thing. They're not sure if Zizka took part in that raid, but that happened.
Okay.
Like it was a whole mess.
We should have him on as a guest.
Wenceslas?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know anything about him.
Well, we're going to talk about him
Oh, okay.
because
I know a little bit about him.
he features into this.
Let me back up though. Henry III.
Henry III.
Was he a robber baron? Was that? Or
That's the
did I
That's the guy in charge of Rosenberg. He might have been because he did something that hurt Zizka.
Okay, but we
so
don't
he
know.
the rough theory is that maybe he pillaged his land.
Yeah.
He didn't have much, but Zizka was a proud land-owning
Sure.
noble.
Yeah.
So he might have hurt his parents, his siblings. He had at least 2 siblings that they know of. Could have had a bunch more. They didn't take super close records.
Yeah.
It's just those are the ones who cropped
But
up
Henry
through history.
had
But Henry
done
did something to.
But he
to
had also
Jan
done
Zizka.
some of that robbery baron.
And yeah, that was pretty common
He
for
was
nobles.
known for-
If you had a beef with your neighbor, you got an armed posse together, and you rode over there, and you burned some stuff down, and you took off some loot and maybe some peasants, and you brought them back home, and you're like, we won.
Simpler
That happened all the time.
Simpler times.
Yeah. And the weaker the king...
Oh, the good old days.
Yeah. This is what happens when you don't have like a big federal government going no and like unified laws across the land, because then the king, it's literally like the king's law goes as far as the king can reach. So that's why like in England, when you had Henry II, and he was terrifying to all the nobles because he would just show up at their castle with an armed retinue, and they're like, I have to be good because I don't know when the king's gonna show up.
The king's here,
with
baby.
an army of trained killers who might just be like,
Today's the day.
I'm not pleased with your performance.
Yeah.
Today is your performance review,
Oh, I was not prepared.
and you have been found wanting. Take his castle. No.
Use your pointy things.
Yep, and he did that Henry did that all the time.
Okay.
Wenceslas seems, well, he got captured by like his brother. Like he's not like a iron-fisted king.
Yeah.
And this is kind of a rough period in history for Bohemia at this time. There's a lot of change happening. There's not as strong of a king at this point. The king is actually elected from the nobles.
Okay.
The nobles pick their king. So Wenceslas was liked by his nobles, but his brother Sigismund, who was the king of Hungary, was like, go in jail, Wency. They had like kind of a rivalry.
Okay. Citrus Moon?
Sigismund.
Sigismunda?
Siggy. Sigismund. 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 Sigismund.
Yeah.
The Moon of the Siggy.
I'm not going to call him anytime soon.
Yeah. But he'll feature in the story a little bit later,
well,
too.
good to know.
Yeah, he's important. So Wenceslas had been captured at some point. They're not sure if Zizka was part of that. I don't think he was, because after a while, on 27th of June, 1409, so if he was born in 1360, he's 49 right now.
Okay, there's some quick math there.
We're not really, like I said, so much of his life is not known about.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't super important back then. So he, at this point, could be 30.
Okay.
He could be 50.
Right.
They're not really sure. Now, if he's riding around one-eyed, raiding and outlawing and pursuing this vendetta against this nobleman, and he's 50, this is a badass 50-year-old.
Hey, I
this is
can
a
do that.
tough guy.
Well, I'm 50.
Yeah, you could do it. You just have to,
Poke my eye out.
I got to poke your eye out,
There you
and
go.
also I have to give you 50 years of hard life living in
that's right.
medieval Bohemia.
And I need to learn how to ride a horse.
You got to learn how to ride a horse, wear armor, and fight.
All right.
Because apparently he was quite good at it.
This may take longer than I thought.
Yes. So 27 June 1409, Wenceslas, who is no longer imprisoned, pardons him. He releases an official pardon. First of all, he goes to like the city. He's like, all right, this vendetta's done. So either it was resolved to everybody's satisfaction,
Right.
or he was just like, no, I'm tired of this
I
crap.
don't like being in prison.
I didn't like being in prison, and I don't like my people fighting.
Yeah.
Because while you guys were doing this crap, I got captured and thrown in my own castle.
It's funny how you brought it up after he was captured.
Yeah. He's like, suddenly now you don't
Now
like
it's important.
Now you don't like this.
Okay.
Where were you when it was happening to me?
Yeah.
But for some reason,
Busy with his figgy pudding.
he
or whatever.
decides to forgive all of this, and he refers to Zizka as faithful and beloved.
Oh.
So he might have known him.
Okay.
He would not say this to the guy who raided a castle and threw him in prison. He's not going to do that. That's why I don't think he was probably part of that raid.
Okay.
He could have been on the opposite side, protecting him or something like that.
He was there though somehow.
He might have. He was a contemporary of the time, and it was in
Okay.
the same region, so he could have been involved. There's actually a video game kind of based around these events that talks about it called Kingdom Come Deliverance, which unfortunately was developed by a guy who was behind one of the Gamergate scandal.
Oh.
Yeah, which isn't great, where they were like, girls don't play video games, and
Yeah.
really, really unapologetically kind of awful person.
Yeah, yeah.
But the game, despite being released with a bajillion bugs and a lot of problems, when they've cleaned it up, was a really nice representation of that time in history in a part of the world where that doesn't get talked about a lot.
Yeah, okay.
Because I can't name any other games that take place in the Czech Republic in the Middle Ages. So it was a really nice break off. You get to experience like medieval culture. It's hard. It's a very difficult game.
So was life in the Middle Ages.
Yeah, it's kind of like, okay, I get it. Life sucked. Why does my gaming experience have to reflect that? But it was a
futuristic game. Then, if you want
exactly.
a rough life.
Yeah, go to do Star Trek.
You're lucky they didn't make you plow. You just got to press buttons.
Yeah, there are games that do that. There's another game that just came out. They're like, so you have to work your way as a farmer to do this, to do that. I was like, wait.
Mm-hmm.
I actually have to work?
Mm-hmm.
I play video games so I don't have to work.
Yeah,
this is my break from work.
Depends
I don't want to go be a pet. I feel like if you're playing a game like that, why aren't you out like doing that actual I feel like I'd rather just go tend my garden, than actually like generate an actual crop.
Fake garden, yeah.
Then I made a fake garden.
Everyone's got their thing.
But hey, there's people who play Farming Simulator has like 19 editions now, and it's super popular. There's a goat simulator. I don't know how we got into vegan. Sorry, but anyways, the game is interesting because it talks about the kidnapping of Wenceslas.
Yes.
Sigismund showing up with an army of mercenaries and his own guys and just kind of doing what he wants for a few years. But now Wenceslas is free, and it seems like he's trying to clean things up. Right. But our story specifically focuses on how he pardons Jan Zizka, and it seems like he really likes this guy. He appreciates him. He calls him faithful and beloved. Okay. So he must have... What I think is he said that your cause is noble and just. The reason why you went to banditry is a legitimate reason, but it's done now.
Okay.
Like, because if he was just some blackguard jerk who went off and was murdering people for no reason, no king's going to pardon that, no matter how good of a fighter you are, especially if you're a lesser noble, going against a much more important noble. You'd just be like, get out of here.
Back up. Why was Wenceslas released?
I think his brother released him at some point. I don't remember if there was a siege that broke him loose or there was an agreement. I can't remember that as well. It didn't factor into this chunk, but it's a really interesting event, so I might do a whole episode just on that.
We'll file that away.
It's kind of a wild time. Like I said, there's all kinds of craziness going on. Then, a year later, he fought at the Battle of Grunwald, which I am going to do an episode on. Zizka. He was either a mercenary or was part of somebody's retinue. Okay. But the Battle of Grunwald was possibly the largest battle in medieval history. If not the largest, it was one of the largest. We're talking like the estimates are in the tens of thousands per side, which is not something that you saw much of.
Isn't it also a Harry Potter character?
Grunwald?
Maybe. All right. I don't know.
No, it's Grimwald. Grimwald? It's the Johnny Depp guy, but then he got replaced with Mads Mikkelsen for a whole thing. Yeah. And then I got confused. Yeah. Now I don't know where I am. Sorry. Battle of Grunwald, also called Tannenberg, depends on which side you're on. Oh. The Germans call it Tannenberg. So this involves Poland, this involves Lithuania, and this involves Bohemia and a bunch of other people. Basically, it's Eastern Europe versus Western Europe. Okay. And it was a huge brawl, mostly between the Teutonic Knights, who were the most powerful military order of knights at the time, and they were waging a crusade against Poland, saying, you're not Christians, even though they were. Oh, yeah. Didn't they also do that further away? Oh, they did that all over the place. They did that all over the place. The Teutonic Knights were horrible about this. Their big thing was Lithuania. They hated Lithuania because they were recently pagan. Okay. But they stopped being pagan, and we're going to talk about this next week, so I'm not going to go into detail. Oh, okay. But when the Grand Duke of Lithuania, Jogailo, married Jadwiga, the king they called her of Poland, he converted. This is next week's topic. Yeah. But this is what causes this war, though, that Zizka's involved in. So this was a big deal. Okay. And they're like, they're all Christian, it's fine. And the Teutonic Knights were like, nope, already called up the army, let's do this. Well, we did plan this war. It was really a chance for them to seize a lot of property. And fight and get money and prove that they should be a military order that got
Yeah.
funded by the Pope.
You're not gonna get all armored up and sharpen up your swords and not
It's a lot
kill
of work.
somebody.
Yeah. It's just like in Braveheart. We didn't get dressed up for nothing.
That's right.
And they didn't. So, huge battle. They fought from basically dawn until dusk. Medieval warfare. So they were just hacking away with swords and axes. And it is brutal fighting. High casualties on both sides. It was an awful battle.
Yeah.
Zizka's side wins.
Hey.
The
our man.
Teutonic Knights defeated, and they go home.
Okay.
Again, it's a really fascinating battle and chunk of history, so I'm going to save that for when it happens.
Tune in next week.
which is
nope, later.
15th of July,
Okay,
1410.
next year.
So he might have been a mercenary at the time, or he just had been recruited. I think probably what was happening is Wenceslas might have known some people and was like, "Yeah, go fight for them." Might have helped him out because there's a connection there of some kind
Sure.
where he's. I mean, and Zizka's got this pardon that he carries around with him for a bit, saying, faithful and beloved according to the king. Don't.
I would carry that around.
He did, yeah, because otherwise they're like, aren't you that outlaw with one eye?
No. I mean, yes, but also
News travels as fast as I can carry this. I'm a good guy now.
Where's the blacksmith? I need this laminated.
I accidentally set it on fire. in the
no,
forge.
no.
No! Zizka is foiled again.
I'll look up when lamination began.
Not then. That was a major battle. So he's got battlefield experience in one of the toughest areas to fight in.
Yeah.
I mean, because this is not nice terrain. This is like lots of swampland, like spooky woods.
Ooh.
It's
Yeah.
Lithuania was considered like scary. Like if you went in there, you were probably gonna die. There were wolves the size of horses, as legend goes, and all this madness.
Man, the Teutonic Knights couldn't even handle it.
But it was a wild land, and these guys are campaigning through there, and so he's on the side of the Poles and the Lithuanians, and they win. Good job. So he's got this battle experience, and then he kind of fades out. We don't know much for Zizka for a little bit, but then he comes back in 9 years later in Prague.
Don't call it a comeback.
Yep. So it's the 30th of July. A lot of stuff happening in July. 1419, Prague. Now, before we go into this, I have to talk about another Jan. Jan Hus.
Jan number 2.
Jan number 2, whose best follower was also named Jan, but I don't remember his last name, and he's not important to the story, so I'm not going to talk about him.
Sure.
I'm just Jan. That's Jan number 3.
Right.
So Yanni,
Yanni?
but Jan Hus.
Yanni and his pan of flute.
Yeah, Jan Hus and his pan flute. Yanni is not. He's underrated. He's actually delightful.
Yeah.
I've seen like his concert stuff. He's
Oh,
actually
you've seen
very
him in
talented.
concert?
I've just seen a recording.
Oh,
of it.
you
I
haven't
would
seen
go,
him,
if he actually toured
would
in
go
here.
check
I would
out
go.
Yanni?
I would go see Yanni. He's really good, and he's like really warm and nice, and he's a Greek.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He
so
probably is. I don't know why you got a bad name.
I don't know. I think people were just like, it's like the Kenny G, smooth jams, easy listening. I was like, sometimes it's nice to not be stressed while listening to music.
I think it might have been the pan flute itself.
It might have been the pan flute itself.
Looks weird that you can't do that.
It does, but
Without-
it sounds good.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds cool. It's something I can't do. But anyway, Jan Hus,
Jan Hus, not
he
a
was
flute
a
player.
priest at a young age.
Might have been a
to
flute player.
basically, he might have been a flute player. Bad joke.
Jan,
It was the Catholic Church.
Jan Hus.
H-U-S. That's
Oh,
it.
H-O.
Jan. They Americanized it Jan Hus.
Jan Hus.
Jan Hus. He was a priest who didn't like a lot of the special rules within the Catholic Church. At the time, if you were not a member of the priesthood,
Yeah.
so a member of the laity, as they called that was the peasants and such,
Yes.
you could only have the bread, but not the wine during church.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know how Christian Mass goes, a big part of it is at one point the priest has a piece of bread and says that this is the body of Christ, our Savior, and this cup of wine is his blood. At the time, everybody believed that there was transubstantiation going on, so that this was actually the bread would transform into the body of Jesus, and the wine would transform into his blood, and that made it a very sacred thing.
It also made it easy for other religions to go, cannibalism!
Yep, exactly. Other religions could go, that's
messed
you
up,
just
man.
lost me. You just lost me. Which is why a lot of like modern Protestant faiths say there is no transubstantiation. And there's even groups within the Catholic Church that say, no, it's just representative because his literal words in the Bible are, this is my body and this is this. And it's us together and we're hanging out and we're drinking. Do this in memory of me.
Yeah.
That's what he always says. Do this in memory of me. So it's like here's for my dead homies.
Yeah.
This is...
Gosh, I was there having breakfast and had bacon and stuff. So.
Well, they're Jewish, so they might not have been able to, depending on where it came from on the pig.
I wish they weren't Jewish.
You know what? Sometimes I bet they wish that too, because
I'm sure they do.
I think they all died horribly.
Oh, boy.
Especially Jesus. He's probably like, this sucks.
As we know in history, kind of sucks to be Jew.
Yeah, it really does. They just have horrible stuff happen.
I mean, it's
to them.
wonderful.
We are not the ones who have the problems with the Jews.
We're just looking back at history.
It seems to just be historically in Europe specifically.
It's a rough time.
They just like killing Jews for no reason. Like, let's have a crusade against the Muslims. Also, while we're there. And on the way, can we please kill all the Jews? And it was a lot of Germans doing this, unfortunately. But that's because a lot of the Western European countries already kicked the Jews out of their countries.
Well.
And then there's the Spanish Inquisition. And then there's all this other awesome stuff of horrible things happening to them throughout history. I don't know how Jan Hus felt about the Jews or how Jan Zizka felt about them because they are not in this story. I don't think they lived in... I think there was a Jewish quarter. There's a Jewish population in Prague. I'm certain. Because Prague was a huge city and wealthy, and that would bring people from all over the world together.
Yeah.
So
you're telling me there was no Jewish persecution in this story, but we brought it in anyway?
Yep.
We try to avoid it. Every time we get a story where there's not any,
we manage to find it.
I'm happy that we don't have. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Whew, one time that the Jews get off without being murdered.
Yep.
And we had to bring it up.
Yep. And what was one of my favorites was that we talked about Richard the Lionheart just being a monster, but he wasn't a monster to the Jews. That was like his one redeeming quality was he was like, all you guys who are trying to kill Jews, stop killing Jews.
Yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah.
And then he killed people who were killing Jews, which is really weird, especially for kings of England, because not much later they kicked all the Jews out of England.
Right.
Which I guess was a boon to the Jews, because then they weren't murdered for being Jewish.
Yay!
Yay!
Mazel tov.
But then they lost everything else anyway. It just sucks. It just sucks. But Jan Hus felt like the church needed some tweaks.
Jan Hus.
Wow. He did not believe that only the priests should be able to have the wine. He felt everybody should be able to share in the full sacrament.
Oh, so that was the thing
that was a thing that he believed.
Only priests could have the wine.
And only priests could have the wine. Can't imagine why.
The priests made up that rule.
Yeah,
for sure.
I bet they did.
This is how much we got left. Only the priests.
It's not that I don't want you to drink from the same cup as me.
You just can't handle the blood of Christ.
Jesus' blood is very sacred, and you're dirty peasant.
Some people can't handle their blood.
They can't handle the Jesus. So yeah, he thought.
Vlad.
Yeah, he thought that was as stupid as it sounds.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
This sounds like a scam.
There's only one reason that you guys would be Bogart and the wine. It's just because you want to just drink.
You also can't share the incense that we had, the special incense that we use in the back room.
They're like, you know what? In fact, you probably shouldn't have the bread. I'm hungry now. Yeah. I mean, for all we know, they drank like 9 out of the 10 bottles of wine. Yeah. And so they should have had all of this for the ritual, and then they only had one left because they got drunk.
Have you done the communion thing?
Yeah, I was raised Catholic, so I was an altar boy.
You're not missing much on the wine. The wine's not very good.
It's like cheap wine.
Yeah.
And the transubstantiation doesn't make it taste any better.
No.
Nope. And yet when you clean up after, you can't just dump it down the sink. You have to drink it all.
Oh, really?
So if the priest has pre-blessed any of it, which sometimes happens, you're getting...
Who has to drink it all?
Whoever's there. The priest usually has to down it. The altar boys, if they're of age, do.
Other altar boys who are 20...
My grandfather served as an altar boy when... Well, not an altar boy. They didn't call it an altar boy, but a server when he was 70.
Oh, okay.
It was an event for, like, the bishop.
Sure. Just
a show of humility.
Yeah.
But otherwise, like, you had to rinse out the cup.
Yeah, well, yes,
with water, and then you'd drink the winey water. It was gross. It didn't taste very good because it's one tiny part wine to however many parts of water.
Is that all in the Bible? All those instructions are in the Bible?
No, but it's
fold-out
this
section?
is all like ecumenical and ecclesiastical law.
Yeah.
There's the rules made by the priests because they're like, well, we blessed it, and you can't just dump that down the drain. It can't get wasted. Yeah. So these are like little things that Jan Hus had problems with. Yes. He didn't like all of these little nitpicky rules. He didn't like the sale of indulgences.
I don't like that either.
Yeah, he thought that they called that simony, or simony, which was the Simony. Yeah, and that was the idea of that was selling church offices. That one that was simony. But also indulgences were, well, if you pay me this much money, I forgive your sins. He definitely would have had a problem with that.
Yeah,
but
I think.
Yeah, that wasn't really big in the area, I don't think.
Yeah, okay.
But a guy who was inspired by him later was one Martin Luther. Definitely had a problem with that. Yeah. Like he cited Jan Hus as a reason behind a lot of his thinking. Jan. Except for the anti-Semitism. That was just Martin Luther. Because, Martin Luther, super anti-Semite.
Had to get it in there again.
Just had to point that out. But Jan Hus basically was like, okay, so I don't think the church should be run for money. And I think that the people should be able to partake in the whole service.
These are some wild ideas you got here, Jan.
And he preached these were not radical ideas by our standards, but by those standards.
But not if you're the one drinking the wine.
This guy is a psychopath and a heretic.
Yeah. If you're the one drinking all the extra wine and the one getting the indulgences.
The money, yeah.
Yeah, they seem like pretty radical things.
So he's declared a heretic and excommunicated from the church.
Show yourself out the door that we paid for.
In a classic example of Christian charity and forgiveness, they invite him to a meeting to explain his views. They're like, you know what? Why don't you come talk to us? Explain
Let's talk about it.
And then they immediately arrest him, torture him, and burn him at the stake in public.
You want to talk about it again?
What's amazing is, and this is reported by everybody who wrote anything down, he didn't cry out in pain at all and just sang psalms as they burned him alive.
Wow.
So this was a man of very, very strong faith who believed very strongly that the little guy who's being represented by this religion should actually be represented by the religion. He was not a man of war or of violence, but his followers were different. The Hussites, or Hussites, depending on how you say it, but I call them Hussites. That's the Anglicanized version. The Hussites were furious that Jan Hus was murdered.
Oh, are they his people?
They're his people. Yeah. Jan Hus, the Hussites.
Yeah, there you go.
They
could have gone with hussies, but
they could have. Right. But they chose. It's like they could see the future and chose better. Right. But they were livid.
Yeah, it would be.
They're absolutely livid.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, though, their entire
the burning in public seems excessive.
It really, really does. Like awful.
I mean, all of it seems excessive.
All of it seems excessive. But yep. So they treat him the same way that they treated Joan of Arc.
Yeah.
But they also that's what they did to Gilles de Rais, the mass murderer that we talked about.
Yes.
They burned him publicly.
Yeah.
And he murdered like 200 children.
Yeah, that's a mass murder.
So they treat the mass murderer the same as the girl who crusaded for her country to help them fight off an invader, and the guy who's like, can everybody just have some wine?
Yeah, it's rough.
That's what's going on at this time, which is why the more I study religion, the more I study history and therefore religion, the less I like any of it, because I'm just like, why did you think this was okay? Did you set this guy on fire? Because they gave him a chance to change his mind.
Sure.
And he, I should look up quick what he said, because it was basically like I would rather die than lie.
Well, there you
and
go.
Admit that what you're saying is right. Like, because he knew they were gonna do something horrible to him anyway. He knew they were gonna do bad things.
So then why give them also?
But he's like, but why am I gonna give you what you want? You're gonna torture me. You're gonna kill me anyway.
Yeah.
It was this. I'm gonna find it because it was a really great line. But so Jan Hus is murdered, and his people are, well, understandably furious about it.
Now, did they have were they just
like an organization,
a group? Were they have like an area of land, or do they have like are they just kind of spread out group? Were they just like followers.
He'd spend a lot of time preaching. So every town he went to, he got people to listen because his ideas were considered radical for the time. But
who here thinks we should have some wine?
the people around him were like, yeah, this all seems like a good thing.
Yeah.
Like, have the priests be more transparent and not stealing from us.
I gotta say, I was totally on board with his ideas until I saw him burned.
But yeah, he basically just walked around being like, let's actually live by the word and not be awful to each other. And then also, the priests shouldn't wield supreme power over us. Yep. And he's a priest. So he stands to benefit. He's going to lose out by what he's preaching, which is awesome. Like, when somebody's willing to sacrifice their position of power, you know what they're selling is probably pretty good. Especially when the other guys that are just like them murder them. Right? Like, you see that all the time. Where like, somebody's like, you know what's bad is this thing over here. And I'm party to it. And I don't think we should do that anymore. And everyone's like, kill him! Okay. So,
I would say, though, if I was in that scenario and I was a Hussite following him around, yep, that's right. We shouldn't have to pay for indulgences. We should get wine. And then yep, come to this. Janus is burning. I'd be like, I think I'd be quieter about my.
You might not. Yeah, you might not be like.
That's right. I agree.
Everything he said is right.
We're burning him. Well, I mean, he had made some good points. I mean, we all got things we all have different things we want.
Maybe he wasn't right about everything. Maybe.
Look, I gotta go back to my goats. I'm thinking of starting a vineyard, make my own wine. What do you say?
Let's see.
Time's ticking.
Well, he said a lot of stuff. You may kill a weak goose. In Czech, hus means goose. Okay. So he did wordplay. Oh. You may kill a weak goose, but more powerful birds, eagles, and falcons will come after me, which is a suggestion that there will be a stronger reformation because you're murdering me, which is exactly what happened.
If you strike me down, I'll only become more powerful. More powerful than you'll ever know.
Yep. What was the one they said before when they arrested him? I can't find it.
But these are the droids you're looking for?
Sure. Let's look at that. I can't find it. But it was kind of like, it was to the same effect of, you're going to say what you want about me. And they basically said, like, you're going around preaching about the devil and spreading heresy and lies and all this.
Now,
it really was super moderate.
To look at it from their point, if they truly did believe he was like teaching the devil's work, then maybe they had a point.
Yeah, but they didn't. Because the church also taught frequently that the devil had absolutely no power. So in the Middle Ages, actually, that's why you didn't have all these witch trials, like like the Salem witch trials. They didn't believe the devil actually had any power because Christ had saved everybody from that, as long as you were a Christian.
Oh.
If you're a dirty foreigner or you're non-Christian, then you could still carry the devil with you or be an agent of the devil. But we're protected.
Jesus died for our sins. I mean, not everyone.
Not yours. You have to accept that he
was
died.
just one man that we can replicate.
That's the big thing of it, is you have to accept that he did it, and then also pay fealty to whichever church is demanding it at that day.
Signing up is fine, but it's the fees afterwards.
Yeah, I remember specifically Jesus said, this only applies to you guys.
Yeah.
I remember that. It's in the Bible.
Blessed are the meek. I mean, you know who you mean.
The 12 guys who came with me. Okay, so Jan Hus is martyred. His people are pissed. The Hussites had
You say martyred or murdered?
Martyred.
But both.
But both. Yeah. It's always both. You're killed to become a martyr.
True.
So you're martyred. It's both.
Hey, he's been martyred.
But martyrdom
is almost...
He's martyred. Martyrdom is exclusively like for a cause and typically for religion. So he is killed because he wanted the peasants to be able to have wine, basically. Yep. They built a whole slew of... He said all these things, but all the people he talked to knew what he said. He had very... This is a day and age where you'd fill a church with 1,000 people and you'd shout and tell them stuff.
Yeah.
So being a good speaker was really important. He was a really good speaker.
Okay.
Well... The people didn't take too kindly to this, and the Czechs have a proud tradition of voicing their displeasure. So they go to the town hall of Prague. They have a procession. A bunch of Hussites. This is a few years. So this is 4 years after Jan Hus has died.
Yep.
It's his people are kind of in disarray.
Without a
Generally,
leader.
they think the Hussites aren't going to be a huge problem.
Well, yeah, they don't have a leader.
They don't have a leader. So 30 July, 1419, Prague. A procession of people led by another Jan.
Jan.
I don't know. I didn't write his name.
Just a different Jan.
Just
No,
a
no,
different
I
Jan.
thought-
Jan the priest. There's a
it was
priest. Accompanied by Jan Zizka.
Jan Zizka. All right. So led by a different Jan.
Yeah,
All right.
it's led by a different guy, but Jan Zizka's there. So
Yeah.
he's apparently a Hussite.
Yeah.
He's marching along with them, and this guy has a presence. Big guy, one eye, armor, terrifying.
Yeah.
They go to the town hall and demand the prisoners are freed. And apparently, the judge throws a rock at the priest and hits him in the head
Ooh.
from the window. The Hussites are furious.
Yeah.
Storm the town hall, grab the judge, the burgomaster, and anybody they find, throw them out the window, and it's the first defenestration of Prague.
Defenestration.
This is the first of 3.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, that's right.
Because
They
we
do
talked
that.
about the second one.
Yeah.
This is the first one. So this begins the illustrious history of when you're mad in Prague, you throw the leaders out the frickin' window.
Yeah.
Now, unlike the later defenestration, they all died.
Oh.
They threw them onto the pavement.
Okay.
So
Like as a method, I guess that's
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, because they were furious. Like
Yeah.
these guys came and they're like, you guys are supposed to release our prisoners, and they didn't.
Yeah.
And then they threw a rock at him, at a priest, and hit him in the face.
Yeah.
So
So out the window they go.
out the window they go. Sorry, you got to die.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
I'm just thinking about the cleanup afterwards.
Well, yeah.
Someone's gotta clean that
so
up.
basically, the township is like, can we not?
Can we?
And they have like
Could we please not
there's like peace
do this
terms
anymore?
are discussed, and everybody's like, okay, fine, we'll all go our different ways.
Okay.
Zizka does not approve
Of.
peace.
Oh, okay.
He's pissed.
They threw a rock.
He sees the systemic oppression coming.
Yeah. Okay.
They've already been grabbing people. They are oppressing the Hussites. They're calling them all heretics. People are being captured. They're being tortured. They're being killed. They're being burned. And he knows violence is coming.
There we go. Whether
So-
I got to bring it myself or it's just.
So while a chunk of the Hussites, they kind of split into factions.
Yeah.
They don't kind of. They split into like 5 different factions. There's
Which
one
has-
that's like all about moderation and
Yeah.
peace. He joins what's called the Taborites. They're called the Taborites because they go to the township of Tabor.
Okay.
They-
But this always happens in a religious movement when the
There's-
leader dies.
Yep, there's sects. Right. They all follow like the same traditions, but most Hussites are fairly militantly minded because they have to be. They have to protect themselves because everybody wants to kill them because they're not doing the Catholic thing.
Because we wanted the wine for everyone.
We just wanted the wine for everybody. We wanted the priests to not steal from us. We didn't want them selling offices in the church for money. Like,
Yeah, I don't
we didn't think we were asking that much, and now you're killing us. You burned our leader to death, and you keep killing us. Now we're pissed.
Enjoy your crappy religion.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Like,
I guess.
the Jews weren't treated this bad at this point, like in this town.
Yeah.
Like, they're treated like they're like suddenly like it's interesting because in a lot of religions it's worse to be an apostate, somebody who followed the religion and then changed it or left it,
Yeah.
than it is to be like an infidel who doesn't know any better.
Oh yeah.
Like, oh, well, the Muslims, they just don't know any better. The Jews, they just don't know any better. But you were raised Christian and you left, so burn. And they do that in every religion. Like, every religion has, if you're an apostate, like, you get hated on by the fundamentalists. It's
I suppose
really
it is
bad.
one way to keep people in the religion.
Yup, don't leave or we'll burn you.
Okay.
Or decapitate you or something. I mean,
Something
the
awful.
Amish just ignore you for forever.
Okay.
They pretend you just don't exist.
That's fairly passive aggressive.
It's
but
the
I'll
most passive
I will
aggressive.
take that over
It is
burning
the
the
most
stake, though.
passive aggressive. Just like, nope, their shunning is hardcore.
I have no son.
They don't even say that. They just don't even acknowledge the presence. You could be right in their face. They're just like, going over here. It's awful.
Okay.
But arguably better than burning,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Zizka is furious and he marches off to Tabor, where he basically takes the entire town and starts training them. It's like, war's coming.
Oh, okay.
I'm picturing like Sean Bean, winter is coming.
Oh.
Yeah, but it's Czech,
Oh.
so it's heartier sounding.
Wait, did you just cast Sean Bean as John Zizka? Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Oh,
I think I just did.
Doesn't sound good for Jan Zizka.
Well, I mean, everybody dies, but yeah, Sean Bean is a walking spoiler. There was a movie actually just made about it.
With Sean Bean?
No, but that would have been a better casting choice. I can't remember the guy's name. He was in 3:10 to Yuma. Did you see that with Christian Bale?
I have not seen that. No. Was it Christian Bale?
No, it wasn't Christian Bale. He was
Idris Elba.
He's a good. He's usually a side character. He's a talented actor, but
John Malkovich.
He's entirely too young to be Jan Zizka, and they don't seem to focus on his later life, which is what we're going to talk about now, which is the important stuff, which I have not talked about at all.
Oh, let's get to it.
So, Jan Zizka now has. This is when Jan Zizka becomes famous, because up until now he's been one of many, many thousands of people in history who were there for cool stuff, but weren't doing the cool stuff.
Yeah.
Now he does the cool stuff.
Jan Hus was mostly the
Jan Hus is up until now, Jan Hus is the hero of this story. He's the big wig.
We got 10 minutes.
So, Zizka knows a crusade is coming.
Mm-hmm.
Not just a war, a holy war.
I can feel it in my knee.
Yep. I can feel it in my eye socket. So, 17 March 1420, Pope Martin V declares a war.
Martin.
Now, a week after the incident at Prague, the defenestration.
The incident.
Yes. King Wenceslas hears about it. These are his people. He apparently is shocked so badly that he had a heart attack and died on the spot.
Oh, no.
It was apparently what killed him was the defenestration. So, good King Wenceslas is dead because we threw people out of a window. Because we checked them out a window. Zizka's gonna kill them. And that's what happens. So
probably didn't make it in the song because I bet defenestration is hard to fit into a rhyme scheme.
Defenestration of
the defenestration of Prague. It was very funny.
No,
it wasn't very funny.
Throw rocks at a guy's head leads to defenestration. I don't know. I feel like you end with defenestration.
Yeah, we'll workshop it.
We'll figure it out. So Sigismund now, the guy who imprisoned his brother, is king. Or he declares himself king of Bohemia. But he's not elected by Bohemians, but he still says he's the king.
Okay.
So it causes a whole kerfuffle.
That is a problem.
He obviously wants to conquer Bohemia.
Yeah.
So he pleads with the Pope, hey, these Hussites, they're a problem.
So what if you just start a little war here, perhaps?
And the Pope says, crusade!
You want a war?
So a bunch of adventurers, as they love to call these guys, who are basically landless knights who want to kill people and make some money and get famous, decide to join up with this crusade.
Adventurers.
And they march into Bohemia and besiege Prague. That's the target. If we take Prague, Prague is the jewel, we win.
Yeah.
Well, Zizka is not going to tolerate that.
No.
Zizka has farmers and almost no money.
Farmers, all right.
Okay? He doesn't have much. But a very popular tool at the time is the grain flail. Ooh. It is a stick held with both hands, tied with either a piece of rope or chain, and then another big chunk of wood that's usually heavier, and you thwack things on the ground.
Oh, I think I can visualize that, but you want a picture of that too?
Yeah, right? Bam. Flail. This thing was two-handed, and a peasant was good at using it. Yeah. Because that was literally what they did to thresh grain. Like, you just beat the crap out of the grain to knock the seeds out and the chaff out, and that was what you did.
It's just someone's like, you know what? I bet this would work on a person.
Yep. And that's what he did. He was like, well, I'm going to take what you guys know how to use, and we're going to weaponize it. We're going to reinforce these things. Crusaders. So I'm sure some guys are like, well, if we put some nail in there and some metal on it, and it would suck against the grain, but that sucks for a person's face right there. There we go. If you were good with a pitchfork, you got a spear, that kind of thing. Or you just use a pitchfork, because that sucked. You get 4 holes in you.
Like 4 spears in one.
Yeah, it's not great. So he takes peasants who... People always think peasants are like just these weak people. All they do is farm and work.
Oh, yeah.
They're probably really fit and healthy.
Yep.
They don't eat sugar because they can't afford any. So they are all like...
They're all fit. They probably just aren't used to killing moving objects.
They're not used to it. And they don't have any armor.
Yep.
Because armor's really expensive. So he has to use what they have. So this large army of like 4,000 to 5,000 crusaders, mostly knights, show up. And again, plate armor.
Yep.
Professional killers.
Mercenaries? Mercenary kind
Lots of mercenaries.
Right. Yep.
These guys, this is what they do. They fight.
Yeah.
Right? Zizka has 60 guys on a hill.
Ooh.
He puts these guys on this hill. It's the Vitkov Hill. It's now called the Zizkov Hill.
Oh.
So I should let you know what it is. They fortify this hill with whatever they can, basically barricades. There's this old tower that's like half falling down. It's really hard to get up this hill. He throws his guys on this hill. Now, there's a story is there were like 24 people and 24, well, it's like 27 people total, but it was like 24 men and 3 women. So there were women Hussite warriors.
Right.
But the modern estimates actually put it all the way to a whopping 60.
Whoa, twice as many.
And he decided
Against
to
how many?
use 4,000, 5,000, maybe
Yeah.
6,000. He decided to use a handy little thing called a gun.
He had a gun?
He had a lot of guns.
Oh.
He's like, well, these are typically not used in war. They're used in sieges. But I bet if we point them at people, that'll suck.
Oh.
So he gives peasants, who aren't great with a lot of weapons, some guns and flails.
Okay.
And as the knights charge up, they just level them.
Wow.
They hold the fort, this little hill, and drive off the Crusaders when a relief force comes in and helps them out. And it's a rout. They just defeat the Crusaders. It's a one-sided whooping.
Wow.
I don't know how they did it. And apparently like 400 to 500 knights died.
Did they have that many bullets? mean,
I don't know.
yeah.
And these are not bam, 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 bam.
Yeah.
These aren't even bam, pull out the ramrod type guns. These are this big. They're like little cannons.
Yeah, okay.
But apparently in the confusion and everything, the narrow quarters and these people just valiantly fighting.
Sure.
And these guys just completely underestimating it. And Zizka's apparently a terror in combat.
Okay.
They win.
Yeah.
They drive these guys off. The reinforcements come in. So it's not just 60 again, in an open field. They
Right.
have an advantage of terrain. They're prepared. They have firearms. They're
protecting their place versus.
Yep. They have a cause to fight
aggressors.
for.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a very one-sided defensive victory. The Hussites drive them out. Sigismund retreats to 2 castles, and then the Hussites end up taking those 2 castles. Now Zizka declares a state of total war against the Crusaders. Constant, non-stop, mobile warfare.
Oh.
So he has to develop a strategy. He doesn't have as many men. He doesn't have a lot of weapons. He doesn't have money. But he has followers who are devoted, and he has a very brilliant mind. And what he does is he takes wagons, reinforces them, fills them with peasants with flails and handguns, and then mounts artillery pieces in them. Bigger cannons.
Oh, okay. On a wagon.
On a wagon.
Okay.
And then he makes wagon trains. And then they ride up, go into a ring to make a portable fort,
Okay. Yeah.
and can hold off waves. He basically invents the tank.
Oh.
Because these things are covered
Yep.
and fortified and defended and impossible to break through.
That's some farmer.
It's
know-how.
amazing. So he rides out with these guys. He's got this wagon train, and they start calling it a wagon burger, which is like a wagon, wagonburg, which is like a wagonburg, which is like a fort, wagon fort.
Okay.
So he rides these guys out, and he fights. He has to figure this out because his army got surrounded, and they were gonna get wiped out. He's like, everybody get in the wagons and just ride and start shooting. And so this column of wagons is just rolling through the army, blasting in every different direction. If you got close, you got hit with a flail. It's just total chaos. And the knights are like, what the hell is going on? They have no idea what's going on.
Okay.
It's the equivalent of fighting a tank. They don't know what's going on. Sigismund thinks, well, now that they're running, they're defeated.
Oh.
They go, and then they realize this tactic worked really, really well. So then they refine it, and they use it again and again and again and again and again and again. And for the next 3 years, this is how Zizka fights his wars. And he wins every single battle he fights. He does so well, he invades Hungary and brings the fight to Sigismund.
Oh, starts being the aggressor.
Nobody can stop this guy. And the craziest bit is that in, I think, one of the sieges that he fights, he got hit in his other eye. He loses it.
No. Blind
He becomes
Zizka.
blind Zizka.
Oh, blind Zizka.
And 2 years longer, he leads campaigns
By smell?
as the general commanding his troops and is still never defeated.
Wow. How does he do that?
I have no idea. I think he must have
take me to the front.
had guys telling him
Surely, yeah.
they're coming this way, they're coming this way, and he just tells people what to do and they do it. And he stands like in the forefront shouting for his guys to do stuff and they do it blind.
Yeah, well.
There's a
Actually-
picture right here of Jan Zizka on a horse, blindfolded, leading his army.
Oh.
Apparently, he just did it. I don't know how.
Well,
I honestly cannot fathom how this dude is riding around on horseback with no eyeballs, not losing battles.
I don't know, man.
Which says that he
Good
trained...
horse.
Great horse. He also must have trained his army extremely well
There's
so
that
that
too.
they can function without him.
Yeah.
Probably... Now, I don't have the specifics of the tactics, but I assume it's kind of like a modern tank. You train the crew to operate the tank as an independent entity.
Yes.
So you train the guys to operate the wagon as an independent entity. So they can handle any kind of a threat as long as they're in their wagon. They don't need orders for how to shoot, where to shoot, when to shoot.
Right.
And then if you have a dozen wagons like that or more,
You
and
just
each
say,
one's working the same way.
Go that way.
I mean, you just tell them where to go, and they know where they're going, and they ride, or they push the wagons, or they get out of the wagons, and they form their little forts. And they can do this all over a battlefield. You suddenly have this very mobile, very, very lethal, easy to train, difficult to master type of force.
Okay.
So Zizka trained them so well, and he had such good commanders under him that he could basically just get information and say, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it, and this is what's going to happen. And then it would. It's a brilliant, and again, I don't know how he managed it, but he fought like 8 major battles, and for half of them, he was completely blind.
Wow.
And
All right.
he won, and he never lost. Unfortunately, for good old Jan Zizka, he catches the plague.
Ah, well, there we go. Can't run from the plague.
They literally say what man could not do, God did. And he dies from the plague. So
the plague.
the only way they could kill Jan Zizka, couldn't kill him with being blind, couldn't kill him in battle, but the plague got him. He had a follower after him who was not named Jan, who went on to lead an army. Now, during this, Zizka has to deal with like Hussite civil wars because the factions split up, but he still fights Sigismund. He fights the Pope. He fights everybody. He fought 3 total crusades against them and won.
Oh, okay.
This guy's just unstoppable. To this day now, so he is considered one of the great national heroes of the Czech Republic for good reason.
Yeah.
He's terrifying. Here's his statue.
Cool.
That's the one that's on Ziskov Hill, which was Vitkov Hill, not I think Zitkov Hill. Named in his honor for the crazy defense of it against this massive army. He inspired future generals. He's considered one of the greatest medieval commanders for obvious reasons. Yeah. He helped develop the idea of mobile field artillery. So even like Napoleon used some of his ideas. Fascinating guy.
And he didn't do this to seek to be in charge of things.
He took one prize during his entire military career. He took a castle. And that was the only thing he kept for himself.
I just want a nice
and he
castle.
named it the Chalice.
Oh.
And that was it. That's the only thing he claimed, which actually is listed as being marketed and different than any other military commander of his time, because almost every single other person took land, took wealth, took stuff.
Yeah.
That's all he asked for himself. And it was basically no more than what his station would require as a leader of so many people. And it would give him a place to, house himself, house his people, and work as a holdfast against any incursion. So he didn't seek wealth or power or fame. He just saw this was the right thing to do, and I'm uniquely placed to do it. But it's wild that he comes from this kind of weird background of an outlaw, but we see this history of noble causes. He's fighting for his family or fighting for something apparently that was noble enough the king forgave him for it. It was like, this is done. And with one eye for the majority of his life, and then loses the other eye, and he's still And they were terrified of him.
I would be.
They were absolutely terrified of this guy. And yeah, I would be too. It was like, oh God. When he died, they're like, okay, God, he's finally dead.
Yeah, boy.
Oh my God, I'm so glad he's
Thank
dead.
God for the plague.
Thank God the plague got him. And they literally thought, of course,
Sure.
God did it.
Uh-huh.
Thanks, God. You're totally on our side, not on their side. Wild times. There are still Hussites to this day, but they were horribly, 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 horribly oppressed. But because of this, he earned Hussite freedom for 200 years.
Oh,
they were able to practice their faith until the Battle of White Mountain, which was at the start of the 30 Years' War, which we talked about. This is the Peace of Westphalia is what handled that. And that's when Catholicism was like, no more Protestants. And they came in really heavy-handed and just started killing people or forcing them to convert.
yes.
But yeah, so because of his efforts, he helped the legacy of Jan Hus survive. This guy, even with one eye, he saw the writing on the wall. Pretty crazy.
Good job, Jan Zizka.
He's a bad dude.
Bohemian one-eyed monster.
Yep. Absolute
Which
hero.
is a
I love
tattoo I have. Well,
it's a band name right there.
That was the life and death of Jan Zizka. And if you have any comments or corrections or thoughts on this, please put a comment.
Pronunciation stuff always helps.
Like and subscribe and share this with other people.
Yep.
And tune in next week. We'll be talking a little bit more about
Jadwiga.
Jadwiga.
Or Jadwiga.
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 We're touching
Also
more
called
on
Hedwig.
Poland and this time period as well.
Yep. Yep.
So that's it, right?
Yeah, that's it. That's all I got. So yeah, next week is specifically Jadwiga is crowned the king of Poland, even though she's a girl. Ooh. Pretty wild.
Let's find out.
Yeah, that's all I got.
All right, Will. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike.
Bye.
Bye.